listen to me yap while I do my dishes. I saw this really interesting post by Tumblr user VALTSV. They posted this like alignment chart thing, like a triangular alignment chart for rule systems for fantasy and sci-fi stories, how their rule systems interact with like the character's free will. At the top is angel rules, and it says you can break the rules, but doing so will have irreversible consequences. Then at another corner is machine rules, where it says the rules are encoded in your very being, and to break them requires breaking you. Can you see where I'm going with this? And then in the other corner is Fey rules. You can't break the rules, but you can exploit any loophole. And even though this chart is talking about like a magic system or a rule system within a story, I feel like these categories work really well for like the moral systems with the three main characters in Trigun, with Vash, Wolfwood, and Knives. Each of them believes the world is like this, or the world operates in this way. Therefore, to survive in this world, I must operate in this sort of way. Let's start with Knives. Knives is operating by Fey rules, which says you can't break the rules, but you can exploit any loophole. Knives has a very clear rule for himself, and he will abide by that rule by any means necessary. And that rule is, I must protect my sisters and my brother. I will not let what happened to Tesla happen again. And if he must accomplish that, abide by that rule, by hurting his brother and sisters and overriding their autonomy, so be it. That's a loophole that he is willing to exploit. He's still adhering to the rule. He is still trying to protect them. Because he sees the world in a very inflexible way. And so the worldview that he adopts is equally as inflexible. And since he has more power, more raw power than any being in the universe, than any being has ever possessed, he can do anything and exploit any loophole to stick to that rule, to accomplish that goal. So it kind of explains the seeming inconsistencies within Knives, where he believes all humans must die in order for his kind to be free, but he's willing to keep a few humans around for his own purposes, right? And then he'll get rid of them when they're no longer useful to him. That's a loophole. But it's still servicing his ultimate goal of freedom for the plants via death to humans. And then even at the very end of Trimax, when he realizes that he is wrong about a lot of things, that overarching rule still never changes. He decides that he's going to be okay with humanity's continued existence. He realizes that the plants and Vash need humanity in order to thrive, to live in a symbiotic coexistence. And so if the means of protection for his sisters and brother is humanity's continued survival, then he will ensure humanity's continued survival. The rules don't change. It's still, I need to keep my brothers and sisters safe at any cost. The means or the method is different. The apple tree is this loophole. Moving on to Vash. This one is very obvious. Machine rules. Breaking the rules requires breaking you. Vash has his rules, and he needs those rules in order to operate. The one time he breaks those rules, it breaks him, and he has to restart. Unlike Knives, who has this very narrow view of the world, Vash has the most robust and true understanding of the world, where he recognizes the good and the evil and the potential for change. But in exchange for that robust worldview, the trade-off is then that his rules are the most inflexible. Because of the three characters that I'm talking about, Vash is the closest to a true and functional understanding of the world and how to live in it well, and the ethics required for a life like that, and the truth that the world could be so much better, and he can help guide it there. And so, in order to help guide the world to this better place, he has to adopt these very strict rules for himself in order to get there. The trade-off then is that he becomes the rules. He identifies so strongly with his beliefs that a violation of the beliefs then becomes a violation of the self. He is an extreme fringe case of his beliefs, and yet it's his way of living that is proven right by the story. Okay, and then we come to Wolfwood, who is operating off of Angel Rules. And Angel Rules says you can break the rules, but it will have irreversible consequences. Now, Wolfwood's a bit of a different case from Vash and Knives because his rules are not necessarily self-imposed. They were imposed on him by the Eye of Michael, but they were imposed on him by the Eye so aggressively that they then become self-imposed even after he breaks away from the Eye. He's stuck in these ways because he's not yet aware that there are other ways to live. So then Vash starts to show him that he can break the rules and even should be breaking his rules. But breaking the rules will have irreversible consequences. Consequences are not always bad things. It's just a warning that something fundamental about you or about the way you see the world is going to change. And for Wolfwood, that means it's a matter of love and loss and life and death. Vash is not entirely to blame for Wolfwood breaking the rules, because Wolfwood has been a rule breaker from the beginning. He had to be taught to be a killer. He was not obedient in the Eye. They had to break that into him. He wanted to be a priest to help the church, and they turned him into a killer. They taught him to kill. So everything he does from the moment he escapes the Eye onward is a breaking of the rules. He maims Chapel and leaves the Eye. He befriends Vash, loves Vash despite the mission from Knives. At a certain point, he decides not to kill anymore. He continues to love Livio and to sacrifice so much for him. He stays a man of faith and believes in God. He breaks Vash out of the Ark and laughs in the face of Chapel and Knives and Legato and everyone who is trying to diminish him and control him and force him back under those rules. And then it's the ultimate breaking of the rules when Wolfwood gives his life to save Livio and the kids. When you've been taught to survive by any means necessary, to willingly sacrifice your life to save someone else is the most transgressive thing you can do. This is my body given for you. The cost of his own life. And it's because he was indoctrinated with those inflexible rules. That's why at the beginning of Trimax, he sees, at the beginning of his character arc really, he sees the world as something so inflexible, things set in stone. It's the opposite operation of Knives, but it's the same outcome. Knives sees the state of the world as inflexible and so adopts inflexible rules to cope with that. Wolfwood was given inflexible rules and so sees the world as an inflexible place. And so, like, Wolfwood's journey then is to see that the world is not so cruel and brutal as he was taught, even though it is and can be cruel and brutal, but that mercy is possible. But to acknowledge that is to acknowledge that the rules that he's been given are wrong. His character journey requires him to break the rules because the rules are wrong, but the consequences of breaking the rules means coming face to face with love and death. And those are two things that Wolfwood is terrified of. So that's what I was thinking about today. I'd love to hear some feedback in the comments. It was not enough to turn into like a full-fledged video or something, but it's just something I was thinking about. All right, see you later.